The Qedarites were a largely nomadic, ancient Arab tribal confederation, described as the most organized of the northern Arabian tribes. At the peak of its power in the 6th century BC, it controlled a large region between the Persian Gulf and the Sinai Peninsula. Biblical tradition holds that the Kedarites are named for Kedar, the second son of Ishmael, mentioned in the Bible's books of Genesis and 1 Chronicles, where there are also frequent references to Kedar as a tribe. The earliest extra-biblical inscriptions discovered by archaeologists that mention the Kedarites are from the Neo-Assyrian Empire, spanning the 8th and 7th centuries BC. They list the names of Qedarite kings who revolted and were defeated in battle, as well as those who paid Assyrian monarchs tribute, including Zabib, Queen of the Arabs. There are also Aramaic and Old South Arabian inscriptions recalling the Qedarites, who further appear briefly in the writings of classical Greek, such as Herodotus, and Roman historians, such as Pliny the Elder, and Diodorus. It is unclear when the Qedarites ceased to exist as a separately defined confederation or people. Allies with the Nabateans, it is likely that they were absorbed into the Nabatean state around the 2nd century AD. In Islam, Ishmi is considered to be the ancestral forefather of the Arab people, and in traditional Islamic historiography, Muslim historians have assigned great importance in their accounts to his first 2 sons, with the genealogy of Muhammad, a messenger of God in Islam, alternately assigned to one or the other son, depending on the scholar. Etymology. It has been suggested that the name of the Qedarites is derived from the name for Ishmael's second son Qedar. Though the tribal name is Arabic, it was first transcribed in Assyrian and Aramaic, as the Arabic alphabet had not yet been developed. In the Maresha Onomasticon, the Qedarites are listed as an ethnic group whose name in Aramaic transliteration is Qdryn. The Arabic triliteral root Qdr means to measure, compute, estimate, to decree, appoint, ordain, and to have power or ability. Qidr, a noun derived from the same root, means cauldron, kettle, and also gives the verbal derivation to cook. Ernst Axel Naff, a biblical scholar who undertook a historical study of the Ishmaelites and determined that they were known in Assyrian inscriptions as the Sumui, surmises that the name of the Qedarites was derived from the verb kadara, with its meaning of to ordain, to have power. As this etymology is a deduction based solely on the prominence of the Qedar among the Sumui tribes, it is viewed as inconclusive by other scholars. Geographical scope. The Qedarites were an Arab tribal confederation, or alliance of nomadic Arab tribes, according to Philip J. King, theologian and historian. They lived in the northwest Arabian desert and were an influential force from the 8th to 4th centuries BC. Geoffrey Bromiley, historical theologist and translator, transcribes their name as Kedar and states they lived in an area southeast of Damascus and east of the Transjordan. 8th century BC Assyrian inscriptions place the Kedarites as living in the area to the east of the western border of Babylon. Moving further east into areas of the Transjordan and southern Syria in the 7th century BC. By the 5th century BC they had spread into the Sinai and as far as the Nile Delta. Qedarite domination of northwest Arabia involved alliances between the kings of Kedar and the kings of Dedan. Historian Israel Afal writes that the breadth of Qedarite distribution suggests a federation of tribes with various subdivisions. Oases in the largely desert region lived in by the Qedarites, such as Dedan, Tamar, and Duma, played an important role as sites of settlement, trade, and watering places. Duma, a remote desert city to the west, known later as Dumat al-Jandal and today as Al-Jawf, was the most important of these, sitting as it did between the empires of Babylonia and Assyria, serving as the base for Qedarite religious ceremonies. Duma's strategic position on the north-south trade route in the area meant that relations with its inhabitants were sought after by both empires. Though Duma and the Qedarites were closer in both geographical and political terms to Babylonia, those coming from the south and wishing to access Mesopotamia were obliged to pass through Duma, which also lay on an alternate route to the northwest, leading to the city of Damascus, and from there, on to Assyria and Anatolia. During the period of Persian imperial rule in the region, the Kedarites exercised control over the desert areas bordering Egypt and Israel and the traffic related to Arabian incense trade upon which Gaza depended. Herodotus writes of their presence in the northern Sinai near the Egyptian border, where they may have been engaged by the Achaemenids, the Persian imperial authorities, to keep that border secure as well as their control of the city of Gaza. Culture and society. Biblical and extra-biblical evidence suggests that of the Arabian tribes, the Kedarites were most prominent in their contacts with the world outside of Arabia. Like other nomadic groups, they lived primarily in unfortified encampments. Pastoralists and traders in livestock, such as male lambs, rams and goats. They also played a key role in the prosperity of Gaza's incense trade, controlling traffic in the desert regions between Egypt and Palestine. As a result of their trading activities, there were clans from among the Kedarites that became wealthy. Though they were vassals under Assyrian rule and were often engaged in rebellion against that empire, the rise to dominance of the Persian Empire proved beneficial to the Kedarites. Qedarite control of the trade routes and the access they afforded the Persians translated into what Herodotus described as a friendly relationship. Language. The Kedarites are among a number of North Arabian tribes whose interactions with Aramaean tribes beginning in the 8th century BC resulted in cultural exchanges between these two large Semitic groups. Early Arab tribal groups like the Kedarites spoke early Arab dialects, but as the Arabic alphabet had not yet been developed, they used the Aramaic alphabet to write. The tongue of Kedar is used in rabbinical sources as a name for the Arabic language. Paponymy, the practice of naming boys after their grandfathers, was common among the Kedar. Some Kedarites had Aramaic personal names, while others had Arabic personal names. Aramaic civilization and its peoples were gradually absorbed by the Arabs, with Arabic dialects in Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, and Iraq in particular exhibiting the influence of Aramaic. Religious worship among the Kedar, as was the case for most of the inhabitants of Arabia until the 7th century AD, was centered around a polytheistic system in which women rose to prominence. Divine images of the gods and goddesses worshipped by Qedarite Arabs, as noted in Assyrian inscriptions, included representations of Art-Hasamane, Nuha, Ruda, Daa, Abiriu, and Artakru-Ma. The female guardian of these idols, usually the reigning queen, served as a priestess who communed with the other world. As mentioned above, there is also evidence that the Kedar worshipped Al-Lat, to whom the inscription on a silver bowl from a king of Kedar is dedicated. In the Babylonian Talmud, which was passed down orally for centuries before being transcribed c. 500 AD, in Tractate Tanis, it is said that most Kedarites worshipped pagan gods. Tomb. There is a mausoleum assigned to him in Kedar city's Anjan province, Iran. Genealogy. The biblical view of the late Iron Age political and cultural map describes it as a set of branching genealogies. Biblical figures 3 generations forward from Terah are invariably described as the eponymous founders of different tribes and polities that interacted with the Kingdom of Judah between the 8th and 6th centuries BC. Such is the case of the Qedarite Arabs, who according to biblical tradition, are the offspring of the Abraham-Ishmael Kedar genealogical line. The majority of Sayyid believe they are one of the modern-day descendants of Muhammad, and that they are therefore the descendants of Ishmael and his second son Kedar. Abu Ja'far al-Baqir wrote that his father Ali ibn Hussein informed him that Muhammad had said, The first whose tongue spoke in clear Arabic was Ishmael. When he was 14 years old, Hisham ibn Muhammad al-Kalbi established a genealogical link between Ishmael and Muhammad using writings that drew on biblical and Palmyran sources, and the ancient oral traditions of the Arabs. His book, Jamharat al-Nasib, seems to posit that the people known as Arabs are all descendants of Ishmael. Ibn Kathir writes, all the Arabs of the Hijaz are descendants of Nebaioth and Kedar. Medieval Jewish sources also usually identified Kedar with Arabs or Muslims. According to author and scholar Irfan Shahid, Western scholars viewed this kind of genealogical Ishmaelism with suspicion, seeing it as a late Islamic fabrication because of the confusion in Islamic times, which made it such a capacious term as to include the inhabitants of the south as well as the north of the Arabian Peninsula. But shorn of this extravagance, the concept is much more modest in its denotation, and in the sober sources it applies only to certain groups among the Arabs of pre-Islamic times. Some important statements to this effect were made by Muhammad when he identified some Arabs as Ishmaelites and others as not. Ismailism in this more limited definition holds that Ishmael was both an important religious figure and eponymous ancestor for some of the Arabs of Western Arabia. Prominence is given in Arab genealogical accounts to the first two of Ishmael's 12 sons, Nebaioth and Kedar, who are also prominently featured in the Genesis account. It is likely that they and the tribes lived in northwestern Arabia and were historically the most important of the 12 Ishmaelite tribes. In accounts tracing the ancestry of Muhammad back to Maad, Arab scholars alternate, with some citing the line as through Nebaioth, others Kedar. Bibliography. Alexander, James Waddell, Alexander, Joseph Addison, Geography of the Bible, by J.W. and J.A. Alexander, Oxford University. Alexander, Joseph Addison, The Later Prophecies of Isaiah, Wiley and Putnam. Alfonso, Esperanza, Islamic Culture Through Jewish Eyes. Al-Andalus from the 10th to 12th century. Rutledge, ISBN 9780415,437,325. Archibald, Zofia, Gabrielle Sen, Vincent, Hellenistic Economies. Rutledge, ISBN 9780415,234,665. Ivanzini, Alessandra, Profuma di Arabia. Atta del Convegno, Luramade Ibretschneider, ISBN 97888870629,750. Barton, John, The Biblical World, Taylor and Francis, ISBN 9780415,350,907. Beckett, Catherine Scarf, Anglo-Saxon Perceptions of the Islamic World, Cambridge University Press, ISBN 9780521829403. Blenkinsop, Joseph, Ezra Nehemiah. A Commentary, Westminster John Knox Press, ISBN 9780664,221,867. Block, Daniel Isaac, The Book of Ezekiel. Chapters 25 to 48, Volume 2, W.M. B. Eerdmans Publishing, ISBN 9780802825360. Boardman, John, Berry, John Bagnall, Cook, Stanley Arthur, Adcock, Frank E. Hammond, G.L., Charles Worth, Martin Percival, Lewis, M. Baines, Norman Hepburn, A.L. The Cambridge Ancient History IV. Persia, Greece and the Western Mediterranean Sea, 525 to 479 BC. Cambridge University Press, ISBN 9780521228046. Boardman, John Boardman, ed. The Assyrian and Babylonian Empires and Other States of the Near East, from the 8th to the 6th centuries BC. Volume 3, Cambridge University Press, ISBN 9780521227179. First one equals missing, last one equals in authors list. Bromiley, Jeffrey W. International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. KP, WM. B. Eerdmans Publishing, ISBN 9780802837837. Cross, Frank Moore, From Epic to Canon. History and Literature in Ancient Israel, JHU Press, ISBN 9780801865336. Davies, William David, Finkelstein, Lewis, Horbury, William, Sturdy, John, Katz, Stephen T. The Cambridge History of Judaism. Introd, The Persian Period, Cambridge University Press, ISBN 9780521218801. Eliot, Charles Boileau, Travels in the Three Great Empires of Austria, Russia, and Turkey. 2. Leon Blanchard, Afal, Israel, The Ancient Arabs. Nomads on the borders of the Fertile Crescent, 9th–5th century BC. Brill, ISBN 9789652234001. Forster, Charles, The Historical Geography of Arabia, or The Patriarchal Evidences of Revealed Religion, a memoir, and an appendix, containing translations, with an alphabet and glossary of the Hamiaritic inscriptions recently discovered in Hadramaut 1. Duncan and Malcolm. Friedman, David Noel, Beck, Astrid B. Eerdmans Dictionary of the Bible, W.M. B. Eerdmans Publishing, ISBN 9780802824004. Gallagher, William R. Sennacherib's Campaign to Judah. New Studies, Brill, ISBN 9789004115378. Greenfield, Jonah C. Stone, Michael Lee, Pinnock, Avital, Al-Kanfei Yonah. Collected Studies of Jonah C. Greenfield on Semitic Philology, Brill, ISBN 9789004121706. First two equals missing, last two equals in authors list. Guzzo, Maria Julia Amadezi, Schneider, Eugenia Equini, Cochrane, Lydia G. Petra, University of Chicago Press, ISBN 9780226311258. Handy, Lowell K. The Age of Solomon. Scholarship at the Turn of the Millennium. Brill, ISBN 9789004104761. Hoyland, Robert G. Arabia and the Arabs. From the Bronze Age to the Coming of Islam, Rutledge, ISBN 9780415195355. Isaacs, Albert Augustus, A Pictorial Tour in the Holy Land. Mackintosh. King, Philip J. Jeremiah, An Archaeological Companion, Westminster John Knox Press, ISBN 9780664224431. Kitchen, K.A. Documentation for Ancient Arabia, Part 2. Liverpool University Press, ISBN 9780853238607. Leslie, Student's Aid to Pre-Modern Middle Eastern Studies, Pentland, ISBN 9781858216980. First one equals missing, last one equals in author's list. Lipinski, Edward, The Arameans. Their Ancient History, Culture, Religion. Peters Publishers, ISBN 9780742908598. Lipinski, Edward, Itineraria Phoenicia. Peters Publishers, ISBN 97807429013,448. Lipschitz, Oded, Knoppers, Gary N., Alberts, Rayner, Judah and the Judeans in the 4th century BCE. EISEN BRAUNS, ISBN 9781575061306. Malamat, Abraham, Ben Sasson, Chaim Hillel, A History of the Jewish People, Harvard University Press, ISBN 9780674397316. Myers, Eric Kemp, American Schools of Oriental Research, The Oxford Encyclopedia of Archaeology in the Near East, Oxford University Press. ISBN 978019511218184. Al-Musawi, Hussein, Claire Bedreau, Daniel Cogni Acute, August Vachon, ed. Genealogica and Heraldica. Proceedings of the 22nd International Congress of Genealogical and Heraldic Sciences in Ottawa, August 18 to 23, 1996. University of Ottawa Press. ISBN 9780776604725. Neusner, Jacob, Jeremiah in Talmud and Midrash. A Source Book, University Press of America, ISBN 9780761834878. Roth, Norman, Jews, Visigoths, and Muslims in Medieval Spain. Cooperation and Conflict, Brill, ISBN 9789004099715. Rutledge, Bruce Edward, Moab in the Iron Age. Hegemony, Polity, Archaeology, University of Pennsylvania Press, ISBN 9780812238013. Patton, Lewis Bales, The Early History of Syria and Palestine, Bibliobazaar, LLC, ISBN 9780554479590. Rizzo, Jan, The Arabs in Antiquity. Their History from the Assyrians to the Umayyads, Rutledge, ISBN 9780700716791. Shahid, Irfan, Byzantium and the Arabs in the 5th Century, Dumbarton Oaks, ISBN 9780884021520. Stearns, Peter N., Langer, William Leonard, The Encyclopedia of World History. Ancient, Medieval, and Modern, chronologically arranged, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, ISBN 9780395652374. Sudairi, Abd al-Rahman ibn Ahmad ibn Muhammad, Abd al-Rahman al-Sudairi Foundation, The Desert Frontier of Arabia. Al-Jawf Through the Ages, Stacey International, ISBN 9780905743868. Taylor, Jane, Petra and the Lost Kingdom of the Nabateans, IB Taurus, ISBN 9781860645082. Wheeler, Brown and M. Prophets in the Quran. An Introduction to the Quran and Muslim Exegesis, Continuum International Publishing Group, ISBN 9780826449566. Zepp, Ira G. Saeed Muhammad, Islamic Society of North America, A Muslim Primer. Beginner's Guide to Islam, University of Arkansas Press, ISBN 9781557285959.